again to What's Up Neighbors with Pam and Linda.
We're up at Zorthian Ranch, and we are so fortunate to have the son of the original owner, Alan Zorthian, here with us today, who is going to talk to us and give us a tour about what makes this place so special.
It's very exciting. It's one of a kind.
And we're
Just
kind of
beautiful.
at the top of the world.
I know. So, Alan, thank you for inviting us. So, what is it like to live here? I mean, it's just...
Well, it depends on... to live here, for me, growing up, was... you know, I had an Armenian dad, and Armenian dads like to make you work, you know. That's what
Okay.
I found out. And a lot of different people. And
I bet.
my parents were very social, and they're...
Like, for example, who was up here?
Well, they had a lot of friends, and I remember there was one guy, Dudley Wright, who was a very wealthy guy. He had a big company, and he would come up all the, you know, just guys who
Wait,
were...
did you meet Andy Warhol? I know that he was up here.
I didn't even know he came up here till later. I talked to another artist named John Outerbridge, who's a well-known assemblage artist, who told me that there was a party up here and that Andy Warhol made an appearance.
Wow.
And with two scantily dressed women.
Oh, that makes the story better.
Yes.
Well, we should rewind a little bit.
Okay.
Just in terms of your father, he was a trained artist,
Well,
or a fine artist out of Yale.
Let's go even further.
Okay.
He was born in Turkey, Turkish, the Armenian section of Turkey, and the Ottoman Empire was, the Turks were the warriors, and then they needed to have. They developed sort of a symbiotic relationship with Armenians because Armenians were sort of a merchant class, and more merchants and artisans, and also were engaged in commerce and things. You know, so it worked. But at a certain point, to kill all the Armenians because then my dad was caught up in the middle. So there's an Armenian genocide, and then his father was a prominent writer. So his father was arrested and taken away to be killed, but he escaped and was able to get the family out. So so miraculously, the family survived, except for they didn't go directly. They went to Italy for about a year, and they or maybe 9 months to a year. They were in northern Italy, but my grandfather took the opportunity to encourage my father, who had shown promise and talent as an artist, and so they encouraged this. And so while they were in Italy, my grandfather took my father around to see a lot of the museums and the architecture and so forth. So he was able to develop an appreciation at that point. And so then from there they went to New Haven, Connecticut.
Right.
And so they in New Haven they were in a tough area. The New Haven area was tough, and you know, immigrants. And
is that how he became a wrestler?
Well, he first had to deal with some, bullying.
Oh my God. How old were you when you? I'm sorry, Lena. How old were you when you literally came to the ranch? How old
Me?
were you? Yes.
Me personally?
Yeah.
Well, I was born at St. Luke's Hospital
my
in
gosh.
Pasadena, and I was then transported up here.
So you really grew up here the whole time?
Yeah, I grew up here.
That's just fascinating. That's just amazing. Are there some things you'd like to point out while we're standing here? Just what you find just amazing, like this house? Did your
The
father...
house? No, my dad didn't build the house. The house was built in 1933 by an architect named Brio Friedman for a doctor and his wife who lived here at that time. They built the house, and they built a swimming pool.
Oh.
So my dad came here in 1946, 47 with his first wife, Betty Williams.
Okay.
And they bought 6 acres, and all that was on the property was this house and the swimming pool.
Okay.
And maybe some terraces out there. And so then but my dad, having gotten a scholarship to Yale because he was in New Haven, and then he gone through Yale as on an art scholarship.
Wow.
And then he got fellowship to study in Europe, and so he traveled all around Europe, and he'd seen all these interesting architecture, and he understood that the artists were also architects in the Renaissance, and so when he had developed an interest not only in art as an artist,
Right.
but he wanted to do architecture. So
That's just amazing.
so
I was reading about that.
he started building, and but he at that time Betty Williams was she was an heiress and she had money, and so he was able to he hired another architect to do his studio over there, and then this house here, which is in some state of disrepair, but we're going to bring it back. And
how many acres are here again?
43 acres.
43 acres.
But it's not.
It's huge.
It's not completely contiguous.
Right,
We have
right.
the upper part and
Right,
the lower
that's
part.
what we were told.
Yeah.
Could we go in and see a little bit of the artwork or something? Maybe show us a few things that your father really
Sure.
treasured?
Sure, absolutely. Well,
Okay.
he treasured he would see the value in handmade objects and things that and he saw value in things that were being thrown away. And so
Yeah, that- I
Well,
think
wasn't
that's
that your
amazing.
grandfather, when your grandfather first came to this country? He said, America's a great place, but there's so much waste.
exactly.
And
Yes,
so
that's right.
your father basically then took discarded things and made art out of them.
That's correct.
It's just
Okay.
fascinating.
It's actually brick, but they figured out this interesting treatment that makes it look like adobe, and it looks very much like adobe. And then these kids are staying in there. And they're-
Oh,
Gotcha.
wow.
You guys like it, right?
You like living here?
Okay, yeah.
Pretty
So-
cool
We found this
adventure.
and we put this here.
Oh, good.
Oh,
That's
you
very
found
good.
that?
Yeah, what a.
Oh my God.
Excellent. Good
Where
job.
did you find it?
At the river.
Alan, you offer people the opportunity to come up here as an Airbnb, is that
Correct, yes.
Okay, all
Yes.
right.
And most people like it. I had one friend who brought his wife, and she was horrified by the road, and so she fled. They fled in terror and never returned.
Well, I will tell you, the road was interesting. I made it up here,
Well,
so.
we made it we always make it very clear on the Airbnb. We show the road going up, so there's
Oh, okay,
no.
so there's
know.
no surprise.
Too.
Well, the house, okay. So the house was here, but my dad, to add on to it later, and unfortunately one of his, first he pulled permits back when he was married to Betty Williams. But
Okay,
then
when he was doing things right?
When he was doing things legally, conventionally, but later he became much more, it was used to assemble this deck here, and then he liked the way it looked so much, he made it into a,
Look at the
Wow.
hoist, the chair.
Can you
That
believe
is
it?
too much.
what's that?
The chair, the hoist.
Oh,
is
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Did your father do that piece over there, the silver?
No, that was done by Brian Carlson.
Oh,
Wow.
we've
Now-
heard his
now
name.
see,
Yeah,
Brian Carlson
we've heard his name.
was is the foreman up here. The way he would approach things, and he
Kind of mosaic?
well, it's what we call assemblage. You see, everything
Yeah, that's what he was saying. Assemblage.
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 I love that, assemblage.
And the artist who I mentioned earlier, John Outerbridge, is an artist who does assemblage, found objects. They incorporated into art, but my dad incorporated.
So was that a little mannequin discarded, or, or is it
yeah,
part of the wall?
that moves around the property. I don't know.
It does?
Okay.
Yeah.
At various times?
I don't know.
funny.
Something it migrates here and there. I don't know why.
Oh my gosh, it's just fast. And your views, do you just love the views?
Yeah. Well, I grew up here. I don't have any perspective because
The mantle, I mean, this piece of,
things are.
that is just fascinating.
Yeah. So he
my
he
gosh.
was using as a brown concrete, and he would get people. Now he didn't do all this himself. You know.
Right, he had resident artists.
Yeah. He would get. Somebody had to.
Skylight.
Yeah.
Wow.
We haven't gotten around to actually
Well,
putting.
when you had a summer camp up here, where was the summer camp?
It was over yonder, over
Okay.
in that area. I'll show you that. a little
Okay. You had to, or is that a weight room? I don't know.
No, my dad. I started lifting weights as a teenager, but I had to do it where my dad couldn't see me because if he saw me lifting weights, he saw that as a theft of his resources. He was like,
That's interesting.
You know, that I got plenty of things you can lift. You don't need to be doing that. You know?
Oh my God.
That's what he would tell me.
Just I mean, look at over on the other wall.
I
Oh,
know,
it's
and
just,
the tire. Physicist.
Right.
He was supposed to be teaching your dad science, and
Right.
your dad was supposed to be teaching him art. But
Yeah.
your father was a better teacher of art than he was of
Yeah, they would
science.
get into arguments. Yeah. About who appreciate. They like to argue, you know, so, because Feynman was an ornery guy, you know. And then they argued till 3 in the morning. Then one day they said, oh look, I guess I don't understand what you do. And Feynman called him and said, look, we don't. So we'll have to teach each other. So they actually
that's
did
how
it,
it
you know.
happened. Interesting. What a great
Yeah,
story.
like
So
that.
do you think they're ready for us to come in, or
Yeah.
we'll just be a
Let me ask
minute.
one second. On a scholarship. Actually, I think he got in there as a wrestler because he was a damn good wrestler. He was state champion,
right.
and he could beat everybody on their team. But then somehow he ended up with an art scholarship. And then once he started doing the art, he couldn't wrestle anymore because you had those pieces. And then this is a mural he did when he was. This is not the actual mural, of course. The actual mural is 157 feet long by 4 feet high. And he did that when he was stationed at Camp Ritchie, Maryland during World War II. And so he ended up doing murals and propaganda art for the Army. And so Camp Ritchie, Maryland was where they did military intelligence. And so the commander of the camp liked him and commissioned him. He actually put the commander right there. And so he.
That's fascinating.
So and so it was. He called it the Phantasmagoria of Military Intelligence Training, and it took him a year and a half. He worked on it. The original's in color, but you know this. I actually have one of his studies for it, which is brilliant color. But you know that these are photographic plates that he had done with the technology at the time. So this is what we have left because it was put up in the Pentagon eventually, and then the people in the Pentagon started looking at it and felt that he was maybe poking fun at them or something. So
This is a
took
picture of your father right here?
That's my dad and his.
Great
my mom.
photo.
My mom.
It's a Shangri-La.
And
That's kinda what I
just quick question: where do you keep the animals? Are over that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's animals over in that sector. Well, no, we have goats over there. So.
That's what I heard. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just
Do they do the lawn mowing around here?
So yeah. Oh, but you know, God's been good to us. So
I know.
we've.
I think
know.
your spirit of your father.
There's a fire road. You
Oh
go
my
up you go up
gosh.
Cheney Trail, and then we have access to. If you go down the ridge with the trail, and then you go back up there, and then you know.
How fascinating.
Okay, I've got one last question, and that has to do with all the fires that we have up here. Have you ever experienced, dangerous fires that have come up in this area?
We've knock wood. We've never had one that came through here.
Okay.
But we certainly the station fire was quite interesting. It
had to be close.
Yeah, it
'cause
was.
all the mountains were
It came.
charred.
It came. Yeah, I saw Brian and I stayed up here, and we weren't going to leave, but we would just see massive. It looked like this incredible conflagration, but it was the mountain behind this mountain.
Thank you again, Al.
Sure.
Like I said, we just